Welcome to the Titan Thought Leader Podcast with your host, Dr. Dawn Orozco. This podcast is sponsored by the QCR Global Group, a niche life science management consulting firm, and the entrepreneurial spirit behind strategic change.
Welcome to the Titan Thought Leader Podcast series. I'm your host, Dawn Orozco, Principal Manager at QCR Global Group, a niche life science management consulting firm. We have an interesting discussion today, since the podcast works to define future trends and open discussion from change innovators from the nonprofit, public, and private sectors of life sciences. We are proud to present the race to add AI applications to enhance drug development. Today, we have on our podcast Malai Sankarasubbar, the VP of AI for Saama Technologies. Saama is a global data analytics company specializing in big data solutions for the life sciences. Welcome, Malai.
Thanks, Dawn, for inviting me for this podcast. Happy to be here. So my full name is Malai Sankarasubbar. If I keep spelling it, the podcast is going to be for more than an hour, I think. So I go by Malai though. So I'm a vice president for AI research in Saama. I have quite a lot of healthcare experience. That is what I bring on to board, apart from my experience with artificial intelligence. Saama as a company, we are trying to optimize and accelerate clinical trials. That is the role what we are in currently. That is what we think we could make a good impact. Myself, have had many roles before. I've worn many hats before. I'm entrepreneurial in nature. I've had my own startup, Datalog.ai. I was the founder and CTO for it. It's a value-based startup where we focus on natural language understanding and virtual assistants. Before that, I used to work for Optum Technologies. Doing something with data. That's been my love. And I actually love unstructured data even more. It throws a different kind of challenge at you. And I do actively build a lot of communities and things like that. I believe in democratization of such a powerful technology. Building community helps me to actually achieve that. So I've been active on the Keras community. I was one of those initial guys who formed a community around Keras, which is a deep learning, most popular deep learning package in the world. I have built another community called Indian Deep Learning Initiative, which has about 9,000 members currently. It's a Facebook group, so anyone can join. I do active community building and stuff like that. Apart from writing blogs and talking on other forums and stuff to actually promote the view that actually artificial intelligence could help accelerate clinical trials.
Excellent. Wow, that sounds like you have a deep investment in the AI community and bridging the gap between AI and the life science. Tell us a little bit about your Chennai offices. We saw that you have a vested interest in that site success. There seems like a lot of opportunity to really put a footprint in that region with the talent available. Could you tell us a little bit about that office and the company's focus on AI and big data as it represents biopharma and how that site will play a critical role in that endeavor?
Definitely. Artificial intelligence right now, it's a talent war out there, right? Like from a hiring perspective, we are going after the same kind of talent that Google and Facebook or even the other big companies out here in the valley are hoarding. Everybody wants that talent since we believe that talent is going to help them solve a lot more problems, right? So a lot of these companies are also opening their labs and facilities in places which we never thought they would do. Facebook recently actually opened a couple of labs in Pittsburgh, Montreal, and other places since access to talent is there. That's one reason why we went to Chennai. Chennai actually has a good mathematical base. We have Chennai Mathematical Institute, Institute of Mathematical Sciences, then IIT Madras, Anna University and the college where I went to, SSN College of Engineering, SRM University, Vellore Institute of Technology. There are quite a few research institutions out there which actually specializes in math and this area of research. Access to talent is the key. And again, right, I'm also originally from Chennai. I advise few labs out there. So that gives me the access to talent for me to actually hire better. Most of our hiring is actually through that. And I don't technically believe in an interview process for hiring. I hire through open source contributions. The deep learning community actually has grown this big just by the fact of open source contributions. A lot of people actually contribute heavily to a lot of these deep learning packages, frameworks, write blogs, share their knowledge. So the community is very, very active in Chennai. So that's the reason we went there. Actually opened a lab in Chennai.
That's interesting and very helpful. It helps us to better understand where the roots of your thought leadership is as it represents that community. In Chennai, since you have a personal as well as professional interest. And it also links the trends that we see with a lot of technology company moving towards the source of the talent, which definitely is beneficial in tapping into the benefits of collaboration with those young minds that are eager to contribute to AI technology and how it represents the benefits to those patients who will see it in the life sciences, especially in biopharma life cycle development of a number of different brands of products out there on the market. So could you tell us a little bit about how Saama partners with their CRO relationships and their biopharma relationships, and in order to provide the innovations that are currently occurring now with Saama? For example, you're working with ICON, and I know you work with a number of different organizations. Maybe you can just generally tell us how those partnerships are really supporting the AI and biopharma bridge that we're looking at right now in industry.
Yeah, it is an ecosystem, right? For you to succeed in this environment, we definitely are good in technology. We are a value-based company. We know technology in and out, right? But when it comes to understanding pharma and other things, right, like, we want to actually partner with people who are running the clinical trial themselves, so that we could actually take the technology and implement through them, so that it could be help from accelerating clinical trials. So that is the reason for actually partnering with CROs. We are actually working on several data partnerships on that. And apart from that, we are working directly for some partnerships with some system integrators. The reason for that is this is a really big problem. I think we could actually make an impact if we all work on it together.
Sure. So, in terms of that, the big problem, can you define it for our audience? Help us better understand. What do you think is the link between AI technology and filling the gaps that are currently there with big data and biopharma? Maybe just to break it down a little bit for us so we can better understand.
Definitely. So the way I would put it is, I like to quote a personal example, right? Where I've used AI to solve a problem for myself, to explain what AI really does underneath, right? I actually like to run. Okay, I don't look like that. I mean, I'm actually round in shape, the way my wife would put it. But I like to eat too. So that's my problem, right? But again, when I want to run, right, I have to decide when I want to run. So being a lazy programmer as I am, usually the traditional way of solving a problem would be, I would go for, let's say, what is the weather outside today? Is it raining? Should I drop my son in school? Should I, is it a working day? Is it a weekday that I have to go to work? What time of the day it is? I have to put all these rules into picture for me to solve this problem. If we just put 4 or 5 rules into take into consideration, the number of permutation combinations that it start coming up would start becoming unmanageable, right? With just 5 rules. But if we start talking about 100 different rules, then the permutation combination of it is not raining. Let's take the scenario, right? It is not raining, and the temperature is 50 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, but it's 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. in the morning, right? During that time frame, I'm not going to run since it's my bedtime. So just for the fact you can't just run, you won't run just since the weather is nice. You have to look at a lot of other factors for running. Sure. So what it does is there are a lot of rules, right? But you could solve the problem better by using your smartwatch. You have the data already. I have a smartwatch, I have a Fitbit, I have an Apple Watch too. So what I can do is I could take the data from that and actually build a model or an AI algorithm to help me to decide whether I should run or not. Right. So what it really does is it learns the rules from data. Okay, that is the flip. Traditionally, you have your rules. You try to solve a problem by using the rules. When the rules becomes too big to manage, you want to learn the rules from data. That is what AI really does. Okay, so from that perspective, right, on a clinical trial or from a biopharma perspective, there are a lot of problems that could be solved using AI. The way I would classify AI itself is into 3 different buckets. perception problem, understanding problems, and reasoning problems. When I talk about perception problem, it's more about anything that deals with images. If you use Facebook actually tags your face with a name. That is actually a perception problem. It's an image related problem. That is where you see a lot of activity, and it is actually applicable for pharma, but that is not an area what we at Saama generally focus on. We do play a little bit on that side, but it could be solved very effectively though. That's the reason you're seeing a lot of production quality systems out there. Then there is an understanding related problems. Anything that is beautiful is very, very hard to understand. The language falls into the beautiful category. It's complicated. It is very hard to understand. The reason is how I write is very different from how you write, or different from the way how Shakespeare would write on the same scenario. Right? So it brings a different level of complexity. Where we play in is understanding problems. And then there are reasoning related problems. Systems haven't evolved to solve reasoning related problems yet. Why we are focusing on understanding is pharma has a lot of unstructured text, right? A lot of documents and everything. Our belief is if you could actually understand text better, you could solve or accelerate clinical trials or optimize and accelerate clinical trials even faster. That is the idea that we are going in with. That is a hypothesis to go begin with, and I think that is true one way or the other.
Sure. Well, that's a great analogy. I think that's what you provided to us to better understand how to correlate the questions and the difficulty in understanding how AI is applied and the thinking process that it provides, which is obviously quicker. And with that in mind, with these innovations that are going on with the technology, how does the regulatory component take into account for this evolution in AI and its applications in biopharma? Have you come across anything that has changed the way you go about putting together your technology? Or I'm sure that's, of course, way of saying it in terms of put it together. But basically, how do the regulations come into effect when it's applied to managing this data, analyzing this data? Are there any stipulations or guidance that is out there that you apply, or is it one that is developing that has not impacted the AI technology as it is being developed for use in biopharma today?
So I like to look at regulations as an opportunity rather than as a challenge, right?
Sure.
For us to innovate. So let's take one scenario as an example, where you have to actually mine doctor notes to actually do patient matching for a clinical trial. Doctor notes cannot be really mined currently effectively. The reason being, it has PHA information that has to be scrubbed. Scrubbing a PHA information of unstructured notes is extremely hard. The reason is, right, there may be a place where somewhere within the document, the doctor could have mentioned a patient's name, right? Let's say like Jim, Tom, or something like that, or you put my name into perspective there. You can't really write a rule to identify a name. So what you really need is a system or an AI that could actually understand the text and identify what are the PHA elements and scrub that information out. So we have developed something of that nature to help us deal with those things. I'm a big proponent of understanding why an AI or a machine learning model makes a decision, interpretability of a model. GDPR has come into picture now, which actually kind of forces a lot of people to think that way. The reason why you have to actually understand why a model makes a decision is at the end of the day, you are taking either to a regulator or to a business person, right? They have to trust the engine, AI engine, or the model that you have built, so that they could actually take and implement it or use it to make a decision, right? If they don't feel comfortable about that particular engine or model, they wouldn't probably use it. So explaining why a model makes a decision is actually a key for its success, for its adoption. Okay. In fact, I have a blog in Saama's website specifically that I've written last year, I think August, on this particular topic. So you have to have an ability for explaining why a model makes a decision. There are some really key research that is happening in this area. There was a really good paper that came out like a year and a half back from Carlos Gustrin, a professor at the University of Washington. There is an implementation of that particular paper as a package has come out too. So you could actually use something of the nature to explain why a model makes a decision. So the regulations are good one way or the other. It is there since you're dealing with human life in pharma. At the same time, right, there are innovations that can happen within these regulations. So definitely there's a boundary. We are playing in that boundary.
Okay. That's very helpful. I can appreciate that. Yeah, in regulatory, just as we look at the changes that are occurring in biopharma in general, we are looking at a time when AI is really becoming symbolic of the future of life sciences or clinical trial management, if we want to get into the detail of where we are in biopharma. So with that in mind, if we were to look at taking into account that we've spoken about regulatory and the pivotal developments in AI technology by Saama, as well as the partnerships that Saama has created, looking forward, what do you think are the next steps for AI technology in biopharma that we have not been discussing?
Okay, so definitely patient matching is one area that would actually see a lot of production implementations coming soon. Even from Saama, probably there will be some other vendors also working on it. Finding a better patient for a clinical trial is a big deal. I think that would be a key area where you'll see a lot of action. Apart from that, you will start seeing AI being embedded into a lot of these systems without you even realizing that it is an AI-based system. For example, conversational experience or virtual assistants, right? Traditionally, you have always, for you to, when you're running a clinical trial, you would have always had these reports, dashboards, and all these things built, pre-built. The adoption rate of those are very, very less when you look at it. But what if you can have actually a conversation with your data and get the same kind of analytics back? What if you could talk to your data, right? So those are the things that you would actually see coming into production or implementation pretty soon. We at Saama are also working on something of that nature. The other industries are very warm to that idea. Pharma is also getting warm to that idea right now. Even when I'm giving a talk in a lot of conferences, that seems to be a pretty hot area where people actually approach you after the talk and ask you questions about it.
Sure. Well, that sounds very interesting. I mean, to be able to identify patients and create an interface with the technology and the users to pinpoint areas of interest in terms of data sets that are integral to identifying key opportunities into other uses, applications for the product is very helpful. And we understand just by, the talk that's going on in industry today, it's much easier to have the ability to go through thousands and thousands and thousands of data sets all at one time, as opposed to what we've been doing now, which is really kind of taking snapshots of what we have from each clinical trial and attempting to collate it. And this is very, very time consuming for a lot of different teams to go through this information. So if it can be analyzed and the results provided in line with those clinicians and thought leaders like yourself being able to provide insight on what that data is telling us, we can move much more quickly into getting products out there or better yet, treatments that will benefit patients more quickly, which is what we hear today, is that patients want access to treatments that are needed sooner rather than later. And the drug cycle, the drug development process is one that takes quite some time and is very costly, as you well know. Well, that brings us to the end of our podcast, Malai, and it's been a great pleasure having you. I wanted to extend my greatest thanks to you and your team for allowing QCR Global and myself, Don Orozco, to meet with you, to have this podcast and meet with you today. and wish you and Saama the best of luck going forward, and hope we have an opportunity to talk again.
Thanks, Don. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Titan Thought Leader podcast, brought to you by QCR Global Group. We'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give a review on iTunes or Google Play. Until next time, see you at the next episode.